I never thought much about the night bus. For me, it was just a way to get home when I missed the earlier rides. Usually, it was filled with a few sleepy passengers, the sound of the engine rumbling, and the faint smell of worn-out seats that had carried thousands of people before me. But that night, something was different. The second I stepped onto the bus, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I hobbled in slowly, my crutch tapping against the metal floor, and the driver barely looked at me. His eyes flicked up for a second, then back down like I was just another shadow passing through. Normally, I'd have brushed it off. Late-night drivers see all kinds of people. But the way he ignored me, it stuck with me. The bus wasn't crowded. Just a handful of people scattered across the seats. A couple near the back whispering, a woman scrolling on her phone, an old man dozing off with his head against the window. And then him. He was sitting on the left, a few rows ahead, directly across from the aisle where I slid into my seat. At first, I thought nothing of it. He looked ordinary enough. Average build, maybe late 30s, dark jacket. But it was his eyes. The moment I sat down, I felt them. Locked on me. Sure. Unblinking. You know when someone stares at you just a little too long, and you can feel it burning into your skin? That's exactly how it felt. I glanced at him quickly, thinking maybe he'd look away. He didn't. His head didn't move. His expression didn't change. He just kept staring at me as if I was the only person on the bus. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe he was spaced out, maybe he wasn't even really looking at me. But then the bus jolted forward, everyone's body shifted slightly with the motion. Everyone except his. He stayed perfectly still, eyes locked, like the bumps and turns of the road didn't affect him at all. That's when the first drop of unease slid down my spine. At first, I tried to ignore him. I shifted in my seat, pulled out my phone, scrolled through old messages, anything to pretend I wasn't aware of him. But it's impossible to truly ignore someone when you know their eyes are glued to you. Even when I looked down at the screen, I could feel it, like heat pressing against the side of my face. The bus hummed along the road, its old frame rattling every time we hit a pothole. The lights overhead flickered faintly, bathing the aisle in a sickly yellow glow. The kind of light that made everyone look just a little more tired, a little more worn down. Outside the windows, the night rolled past. Empty streets, closed shops, the occasional glow of a street lamp flashing by in intervals. Most of the passengers were in their own world. The old man had started snoring lightly, his mouth open, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The woman on her phone had her headphones in, completely lost in whatever video she was watching. The couple in the back seemed caught up in their whispered conversation, their hands occasionally brushing against each other's in that shy, hesitant way. But him? He didn't move. Not even a twitch. His hands were folded neatly in his lap, his back straight against the seat. His head tilted ever so slightly, angled directly at me. And his eyes, those wide glassy eyes, stayed fixed. Minutes crawled by. My leg was starting to ache from the position I was sitting in, but I didn't want to move too much. The thought of shifting around, adjusting my crutch, or drawing more attention to myself felt unbearable. It was like being under a microscope. I found myself holding my breath without realizing it, just to stay as still as possible. I tried testing him. I shifted my gaze quickly, pretending to glance around the bus, and let my eyes sweep across him for just a fraction of a second. His pupils followed me instantly. No delay. No hesitation. Wherever my eyes moved, his seemed to lock on tighter. A small part of me wanted to laugh it off. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he was high. Maybe he didn't even realize what he was doing. But there was nothing sloppy about him. He wasn't slouched, he wasn't swaying, and his gaze was too sharp. Too deliberate. That sharpness started to make me feel trapped. Like no matter how many people were around, it was just me and him locked in some strange, silent exchange. And the scariest part was that nobody else seemed to notice. I glanced toward the driver. He sat hunched forward, both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. I thought about calling out, asking if the bus was stopping soon, maybe just trying to break the tension. But for some reason I couldn't. Something in the air made my throat feel tight, like speaking would only make it worse. The bus rattled through another stretch of road, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. I hadn't seen him blink once. Not once. Not when the bus jolted, not when the lights flickered, not even in those long, dragging minutes. His eyes stayed wide open, locked on me as if blinking would mean losing sight of me forever. That's when I realized, this wasn't normal. The bus rolled on and I kept telling myself I was overthinking. That's what I do sometimes. My mind exaggerates little things until they start to feel bigger than they really are. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the sight of him just sitting there, stiff as stone, staring straight through me, didn't feel like an exaggeration. It felt wrong. We hit another stop. The hiss of the brakes filled the air as the doors creaked open. The woman with the headphones got off, still glued to her screen, not even sparing a glance around. The old man stirred awake, shuffled toward the door, and slowly made his way down the steps. The bus grew quieter, emptier. With each departing passenger, the silence got heavier. The couple in the back were still there, their voices muffled by the hum of the engine, but it wasn't enough to drown out the pressure in my chest. I glanced forward again, just hoping maybe this time, maybe he'd finally looked away. He hadn't. His body hadn't shifted. His posture hadn't slouched, not even slightly. He just sat there staring. And I noticed something new, his breathing. It wasn't normal. Not like the subtle rise and fall of someone just sitting quietly. His chest barely moved, as if he was holding himself in place. Like even breathing too heavily might distract him from watching me. A strange thought crept in. What if he had been doing this long before I even got on? What if, for every passenger that boarded, he'd been locked on one of them, sitting in that same position? And tonight, for whatever reason, it was me. I tried shifting my gaze out the window, but all I saw was black. The city lights had faded, replaced by long stretches of empty roads lined with trees. The kind of landscape where you realize just how alone you are. The faint reflection in the glass betrayed me anyway. His face was still there in the corner of my vision, pale and sharp in the yellow glow. The couple eventually got off at the next stop, leaving only me, him, and the driver. The doors hissed shut, and the silence swallowed the bus whole. Now it was just me and him. My fingers tightened around my crutch, the cold metal pressing against my palm. I didn't know if it was for comfort or if part of me was preparing, just in case. The thought was ridiculous. What could possibly happen on a public bus? But then again, there was nothing normal about a man who refused to blink. I tried to time it. I glanced at the clock near the driver, 11:47 p.m. I fixed my gaze on the stranger's eyes and counted silently in my head. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Still nothing. Not even the faintest twitch of an eyelid. My own eyes started to burn from the dryness, forcing me to blink, and when I opened them again, his were still wide open. I shifted in my seat, trying to convince myself I wasn't trapped. That at the next stop I could just get off no matter where it was. But a part of me wondered if that was a mistake. What if he followed? The bus rattled on, and the space between us felt smaller and smaller, even though we hadn't moved an inch. And then, for the first time since I'd sat down, his lips curved. Just slightly. Not a smile, not exactly, but something close. Something that made my blood run cold. That almost smile sat on his face like it didn't belong there. Crooked. Empty. It was as if someone had told him what a smile should look like, but he'd never practiced it before. My stomach twisted, and I forced my gaze toward the front of the bus, hoping the driver might glance in the mirror and notice. But the driver's focus was glued to the road, his silhouette hunched, his hands gripping the wheel. He hadn't looked back once the entire ride. I adjusted my crutch, the metal squealing slightly against the floor. The sound was slight but sliced through the silence like a blade. That's when I saw it. He blinked. Not a normal blink. Not quick, not natural. It was painfully slow, like someone pulling a curtain closed, then just as deliberately dragging it open again. His eyes locked back onto mine with a sharpness that made my skin crawl. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how dry my throat was. Every instinct screamed at me to get off at the next stop. Just ring the bell, enter the night air, and let the bus drive away. But another part of me hesitated. The road outside was nothing but empty stretches of dark forest. No houses, no stores, no people. What if I stepped off and he stepped off right behind me? The thought made me shiver. I shifted again to see if he'd react. And he did. Not much, but enough. His head tilted slightly, following me with that same unnatural stiffness. He didn't lean, he didn't fidget, just that subtle tilt like a predator adjusting its focus. The driver finally slowed as the bus approached the next stop. My hand hovered over the yellow cord, my heart racing. The bell was right there. All I had to do was pull it, step off, and this nightmare would end. But something in my gut whispered that ringing it would be the wrong move. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way he was sitting, like he was waiting for me to make a decision. Like he was ready. The bus rolled past the stop. I hadn't moved. I told myself it was safer to stay on. I'd be in familiar streets again for just a few more minutes. That's all I needed, a little more time. But when I glanced back at him, I realized something that made my heart drop into my stomach. That strange, crooked smile was gone. And now he was leaning forward just slightly. His hands gripped the edge of his knees, his body taut, like he was preparing for something. Like he knew exactly what I was thinking. The engine's hum grew louder as the bus plunged deeper into the night, trees pressing against the windows like silent watchers. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out every other sound. I clutched my crutch tighter, the rubber tips squeaking faintly on the floor. And then it happened. He moved. Not casually. Not like a tired passenger shifting for comfort. No. His body jerked forward, deliberate and sharp. His hands pressed against the seat in front of him as if to anchor himself, and in one fluid motion, he leaned into the aisle, closer to me. I froze. It wasn't a lot, just a few inches, but it was enough. Enough to erase the fragile boundary between coincidence and intention. His eyes didn't waver. They were fixed, locked, drilling into me as if he could see straight past my skin. My mind raced. Was he going to speak? Stand? Grab. The bus jolted over a bump, throwing my body sideways. I caught myself with the crutch, but he didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. And then, the sound. A soft, breathy chuckle. Low, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. He was laughing. I whipped my head toward the front, desperate for the driver to notice. "Excuse me," I croaked, but my voice barely carried over the rumble of the bus. The driver didn't turn. Didn't react. The stranger's mouth twisted into that crooked grin when I looked back. Only this time it was wider. Too wide. My stomach lurched. I gripped the crutch so tightly my knuckles ached. The bus slowed suddenly, brakes squealing. We were pulling up to another stop. The door hissed open, spilling a draft of cold night air inside. For a heartbeat I thought I had my chance. Freedom was just a few steps away. But as I rose, awkward and trembling, his body shifted again. This time, his hands slid down, fingers curling around the metal pole beside him. Blocking the aisle. Not thoroughly, just enough. Enough to make me hesitate. Enough to clarify that if I tried to pass, I'd have to brush right against him. My breath hitched. The bus waited, doors yawning open, the night outside calling me. But my legs wouldn't move. And in that awful, suspended moment, I realized something chilling. He wanted me to decide. Stay and risk what would happen when the bus emptied further. Leave and risk stepping into the dark with him right behind me. The doors hissed shut. The bus lurched forward. And his hand slid back from the pole, slow and careful, like he was savoring the game. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I tried to adjust my grip on the crutch. My fingers felt stiff, almost numb, as if the cold from outside had seeped straight into my bones. The bus was dim now, the overhead lights flickered with every turn, every bump, like a dying heartbeat. I told myself I'd get off at the next stop. No matter what. Even if it meant walking miles in the dark with my broken leg. Even if it meant limping into the middle of nowhere. Anything was better than staying trapped here with him. But when the bus slowed again, something shifted. The man leaned back casually, like he wasn't even watching me anymore. His hands were folded in his lap, his eyes on the window. For a split second I thought I'd imagined it all, the stairs, the blocked aisle, the low laugh. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe my fear had built him into something he wasn't. The doors opened with their familiar hiss. A gust of night air rushed in. A few passengers shuffled off. Nobody else got on. And then the driver's voice, flat, mechanical. End of the line. End of the line. My heart slammed against my ribs. I whipped my head around. The seats were nearly empty now. Just me, the man, and an elderly woman asleep near the front. This wasn't my stop. This wasn't anywhere near my stop. Wait, I croaked, my voice raw. I need to get off sooner. No response. The doors closed. The bus lurched forward again, but this time the engine's growl sounded different. Lower. Slower. Like we weren't headed for a main road anymore. I craned my neck toward the window. Trees. Nothing but trees sliding past in the dark. No street lights. No houses. No people. And then I understood. I wasn't on the route anymore. I wasn't going home. My stomach dropped. My crutch slipped from my grasp and clattered against the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the empty bus. The man didn't even flinch. He just turned his head, slow, deliberate, until his eyes met mine again. And this time there was no pretense. No casual lean, no hidden smirk. Just raw, unblinking intent. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as paper. "Where are we going?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was asking him or the driver. The driver didn't answer. The road curved sharply, throwing me toward the aisle. I grabbed a seat back to steady myself. The man stood. It was so simple, so fluid, like he'd been waiting for this cue the whole time. He rose to his full height, towering over the seats, one hand still gripping the pole. He stepped into the aisle. Between me and the front of the bus. And for the first time I saw something glint in his other hand, just a flicker of light, metal catching the dim glow of the overhead lamp. Not a phone. Not keys. Something sharper. My chest tightened. My ears rang. The bus engine roared louder as if mocking my panic. I realized then, this wasn't random. This wasn't chance. He'd been waiting for the moment we'd be alone. And now we were. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear the bus engine anymore. All I could see was him, standing there, blocking the aisle, the dim light sliding across the blade in his hand. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but where? The windows were bolted, the bus doors were sealed tight, and with my fractured leg I wasn't outrunning anyone, not like this. Stay calm, I muttered, though my voice shook. My eyes darted to the driver. You had to see this. You had to. But when I looked, his head was forward, his shoulders rigid, and he looked as if carved out of stone. Hey! I shouted, my voice cracking. Do you see this? Stop the bus. Nothing. Not a glance. Not even a twitch. The man's lips curved, just slightly, barely there, but enough for me to know he'd heard me. Enough for me to see the driver wasn't going to help. It was just me. My crutch was still lying in the aisle where I'd dropped it. He stepped closer, one slow, deliberate movement, his shoe nudging it aside like it was nothing. And suddenly it hit me, he wanted me to panic. He wanted me to scream, to beg, to crumble right here in front of him. That's what the stairs were. That's why he'd waited this long. He wanted the fear. No, I whispered, shaking my head. I wouldn't give him that. I pressed my back into the seat, fingers digging into the worn fabric, scanning for anything I could use. My bag was slumped at my feet. Useless. The aisle was narrow. He was bigger, faster, stronger, but not smarter. Maybe not smarter. I forced myself to breathe, shallow and steady. What do you want? I asked, my voice steady now despite my insides twisting. Money? My phone? Take it. He didn't answer. He tilted his head, like a predator amused by its prey, trying to bargain. The blade caught the light again as he moved closer, slow, unhurried steps. I realized then I only had seconds. Seconds to choose, freeze, fight, or find a way out. So I reached down. Not for my bag. Not for my phone. For the crutch. It wasn't much. A broken leg's burden turned into my only weapon. But it was solid metal. Long enough to swing. My fingers wrapped around it, my knuckles white, and I lifted it fast enough to catch him off guard. His eyes narrowed, the smirk vanishing. Back off, I hissed, my voice sharper now, fueled by something rawer than fear. Survival. For the first time he stopped. And in that pause I realized something chilling. He wasn't just testing me. He was enjoying this. The bus roared forward, every vibration rattling through my chest, but all I could hear was my breath, shallow, ragged, desperate. My grip on the crutch was so tight my fingers throbbed, and the man's grin finally vanished in front of me. He tilted his head, studying me like I was some puzzle. His eyes flicked to the crutch, then back to my face. The silence stretched, unbearable, every second feeling like a rope tightening around my throat. And then he lunged. The aisle was narrow, but his speed was terrifying. The blade flashed in his hand as he came down at me, and instinct took over. I swung. Hard. The crutch cracked against his forearm with a hollow thud. His knife hand jerked, the blade slicing the air inches from my face. I didn't think. I swung again. This time, it slammed into his ribs, the force jarring up my broken leg. Pain shot through me like fire, but adrenaline drowned it out. He grunted, stumbling, but didn't fall. Instead, his free hand shot out, grabbing the crutch mid-swing. The sudden stop wrenched my arm forward, dragging me toward him. His breath hit my face, sour, heavy, as he yanked, trying to tear the weapon away. Let go, he rasped, his voice low, guttural. I didn't. I shoved back with everything I had, twisting the crutch sideways and slamming the rubber tip into his jaw. His head snapped back, the knife clattering to the floor. For a heartbeat I thought I'd won. But then he roared, a sound that was more animal than human, and barreled into me, his weight slamming me against the seat. My crutch clattered from my hands. His fingers dug into my arms, pressing me down, his face inches from mine. Don't scream, he hissed. But I did. I screamed so loud it tore my throat raw, echoing through the empty bus. The driver didn't move. Not once. The man's hand clamped over my mouth, his other arm pinning me down. My chest heaved, lungs burning, every ounce of strength draining away as I thrashed beneath him. That I saw it. The knife. Still glinting on the floor just inches from where I dropped it. I kicked. My broken leg screamed, white-hot pain blinding me, but my shoe connected with his side. It was enough to loosen his grip just for a second. I slid sideways, stretching, clawing for the blade. My fingers brushed the handle. He saw it too. His hand darted down, fast, desperate. And in that split second, I realized that one of us wasn't walking away. My fingers clawed at the knife handle, slippery with sweat, but his hand slammed down on mine, crushing my knuckles against the floor. Pain shot up my arm, white-hot, but I didn't let go. I couldn't. His face hovered above mine, twisted, his teeth bared in something between rage and delight. His breath hit me in short, heavy bursts as he pushed harder, the weight of his entire body bearing down on my hand. "Give it up," he growled. I shook my head, teeth clenched, every muscle in me trembling. My broken leg screamed in agony as I braced it against the floor, using every ounce of strength to push back. And then, something snapped inside me. All the fear, all the humiliation, all the helplessness that had been building since I first stepped onto that bus boiled over. I wasn't just fighting him anymore. I was fighting every second I'd been powerless. With a sudden burst of strength, I twisted the knife sideways under his palm, tearing it free. The blade scraped against my skin, nicking me, but I didn't care. I swung it upward with everything I had. He recoiled, jerking back just in time. The blade slashed across his arm, opening a thin, dark line. He hissed in pain, clutching it, his eyes wild. That 1 second was all I needed. I rolled sideways, dragging myself up with the crutch, knife still clutched in my shaking hand. My chest heaved, every breath ragged, but I lifted the blade, holding it between us. "Don't," I gasped. "Don't come near me." He paused. His eyes flicked from the knife to my face, and then he laughed. A low, broken laugh that sent ice crawling down my spine. "You think this ends here?" he said, his voice rasping, broken but steady. "It doesn't." He lunged again, but this time I was ready. I swung the crutch with my good arm, slamming it into his shoulder. He stumbled back, crashing into the seats, the bus lurching as the driver kept barreling down the road like nothing was happening. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I surged forward, driving the knife toward him. It wasn't deep, not fatal, but enough. Enough to make him howl and collapse sideways, clutching his side. For the first time all night, I saw fear in his eyes. I didn't stay to savor it. I staggered down the aisle, heart hammering, knife still in my grip. The doors loomed ahead, sealed tight, the driver's silhouette rigid in his seat. "Open it," I screamed, slamming the crutch against the metal. "Open the damn door." Nothing. No reaction. I spun, breath ragged, knife ready. The man was still on the floor, groaning, but he wasn't done. I could see it in his eyes. And in that moment I realized something far worse. The driver wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to help. Because maybe he was part of it all along. The bus hurtled through the night, the headlights cutting sharp beams into the empty road. My chest burned, every breath jagged as I staggered down the aisle, the crutch thudding against the floor, the knife slick in my trembling hand. The man was still down, groaning, but not gone. His eyes followed me, dark and sharp even through the pain. I could feel it, the fight wasn't finished. Not yet. But the driver hadn't flinched once. He just kept going, hands locked on the wheel, back straight like he hadn't heard a thing. Not my screams. Not the fight. Not even the sound of the knife cutting flesh. I slammed the crutch against the metal partition. "Stop the bus. Open the door." Finally he moved. His head tilted, slow, mechanical, until I could see his face in the mirror above. His eyes caught mine, and for the first time all night my stomach dropped to ice. He was smiling. Not wide. Not obvious. Just a small, tight curve at the corners of his mouth, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. "You did well," he said, his voice calm, steady, almost fatherly. My grip tightened on the knife. "What?" His eyes flicked back to the road. "Not everyone fights back. Most, they freeze. Or beg. You lasted longer than most." The words didn't make sense. My heart hammered against my ribs as the man on the floor chuckled, broken and wheezing. "Almost made me work for it," he croaked. It hit me then. This wasn't random. This wasn't some madman who picked me out of nowhere. The driver knew. He knew. Maybe he'd known the whole time. Maybe he was the reason this was happening at all. The stranger wasn't just a passenger. He was part of it. And the driver was letting it happen. My hands shook so badly I could barely keep hold of the knife. "Why?" I whispered, voice raw. Neither of them answered. The bus slowed, brakes screeching, until it rolled to a stop in the middle of nowhere. No lights. No houses. Just a stretch of empty road swallowed by trees. The driver pulled the lever. The doors hissed open. Cold night air rushed in. I stood frozen, every nerve in my body screaming. If I stayed, I was finished. If I left, who knew what waited outside? The driver's eyes flicked up in the mirror again. "Run," he said softly. Behind me, the man on the floor started to laugh. I didn't wait. I stumbled down the steps, crutch slipping, knife still clutched in my fist. My broken leg screamed with every step, but I pushed forward, into the dark, into the trees, into the unknown. And just before the doors hissed shut behind me, I heard the driver's voice carry out into the night. "Let's see how far you make it." The bus roared back to life, pulling away, its red taillights vanishing into the black. And I was alone. Alone on a deserted road. With the sound of footsteps starting to follow me from the trees. Please, if you enjoyed, share, subscribe and turn on your notifications.